for me as a Razorback fan, full disclosure, more entertaining when Tennessee is strong in the East. It is not just a given that, it's going to be Bama and Georgia or Bama and Florida in the SEC. When our program, Tennessee and Arkansas, are doing well, it seems like the profile or the interest in SEC football is great, because that means if they're in the top tier, there's a whole lot more passionate fan base involved. That's just me. Having said that, how dumb do they got to feel that they gave away sacks full of money for a 3-7 season?
Yeah, it's insane. The more that this gets uncovered, the more embarrassing it is for a football program that has been embarrassed on the field in terms of coaching hires, and then when you can't even cheat to win, that's pretty much the ultimate slam.
You know, I can't stand cheating. I can't stand it. If it's my team, I want to punish to the max. I can't stand it. But if you're going to cheat, for the love of God, win. Don't cheat and jeopardize your entire university for a 3-7 season. And then lastly, I'm going to ask a question. I'll jump off to let you answer it. And that is, what do you think is going to happen with Tennessee losing players? I'm sure there's going to be bowl bans in the next year or two. I'd like to hear your thoughts. I know you did a video on it with the Tennessee guy, but I mean, are you willing to kind of speculate what you think the bowl bans are going to be, and what do you think that the Tennessee players are going to do? You think a majority of them are going to stay and ride it out, or transfer out to where they can play for a postseason?
I believe that there are certain hot button evidences that typically are tied to serious issues, and one of them would be money. As soon as you say money was exchanged, then you're taking that to a pretty high level of when you look at some of the major scandals across college football over the past 50 years. SMU, of course, was at the highest level. There has always been money exchanged hands. Now, there have been some pretty tough, difficult scandals at various places that involved other things, incendiary type of activity to lure recruits to campus and get them signed, or change their grades, fix their grades so they can stay eligible, all those things. But once you exchange money in an amateur sport, at least it is for now on the surface, then that's what is our first indicator that this could be a serious issue and serious penalties. What that is, I don't know. The Penn State situation is a whole different deal that obviously goes beyond, cheating to win. That's a whole criminal case. So that got elevated, and rightfully so, to a whole different level. But when we're just talking about what football programs have been willing to do to cheat to win, exchanging money is about as bad as it gets. So if I'm going to speculate, I don't know. Let's say I would just be speculating without knowing the extent of all of this. If we knew the extent of all of it, and then we compare it to the precedents set elsewhere, then we can make a judgment. But just off the top of my head, I think they lose postseason play for a couple of years, and they lose scholarships for 3 to 4 years.
Yeah. Do you think that during this time they'll recover and become a 6-6 team in these years, or do you think you're going to see a lot of transfers?
I think that depends on who they get to coach the team. They must make a stronger hire than all the hires that they've made since Philip Fulmer, because they've made poor hires, and So where we have seen teams and programs be able to recover in the face of NCAA issues, those schools have hired very strong leaders. Like for him not necessarily being a great football coach, Matt Luke did well to keep it together there at Ole Miss and should be given a lot of credit for working through a horrendous situation following what Hugh Freeze left. Bill O'Brien at Penn State, considering, again, the Penn State situation goes way beyond the athletic competition to criminal activity. It was pretty astounding. Now the NCAA did back off because Penn State did a lot of right things in the aftermath of that. So the initial penalties were harsh and severe, and they should have been. So I thought, my goodness, what's going to happen to Penn State? They're going to be 2-10 for the next 5 years, because who in the world that's at anything above a 3-star will go to Penn State when they're getting offers all over the place, because it was such a stigma tied to Penn State football. And on top of that, reduced scholarships, postseason ban. Who's going to want to play there that's any good? Well, fortunately, they got a strong leader in, and they also had the NCAA show them some kindness and back off on the penalties, and they weathered the storm and went through an 8-4 and 7-5 season. Now Tennessee's not even going 8-4 and 7-5 with a full scholarship load and with no allegations or postseason ban.
Well, Mark, I appreciate your time, and I want to say before I jump off, thank you for all you do for us fans, those of us that are tremendously passionate about college football, even in the off season. I want to thank you for taking interest in each one of these programs by, having writers and podcasters and media people from these different schools. I am a passionate college football guy. I don't think there's a sport that even comes within a mile that's in second place to college football. And I appreciate your studiousness, your passion, your intelligence, and your balance through all of this. The old saying, what a difference a day makes, or I guess what a difference a couple of decades make. As far as Alabama was in the same situation in which University of Tennessee is in now. And the reason what assisted, unbeknownst as far as if you can use that word, the University of Alabama was two things. One was as far as the coach at the time, which I guess he must have had a contract that was written on a paper napkin as far as Mike Price and his son going to a strip club down in Panama City. And that was, quote, the university's just cause as far as not hiring him. And then as far as going a little bit as far as the future, finally finding, quote, the right man. And when they found the right man, he told them as far as on that private plane, hey, do you feel that I'm the best coach? And the AD was shocked that he would ask him that question. Yeah, we feel you're the right coach. But he said, no, I'm not the right coach. I'm the best recruiter. And what he did, he put that 250-mile radius around Tuscaloosa, and he recruited. So, a lot of it has to do with finding the right man, Mr. Rogers. And whether Tennessee is going to be able to do that due diligence, find the right man, and give him 5, because you're going to have to give him 5 or 6 years. I wouldn't accept that job, Mark, unless you're going to give me 5 to 6 years. I can't do it in 4. And really, honestly, if I'm a Napier or the gentleman that coached Carolina, honestly, you have to give me 7 years, because we don't know what's going to come down the pike as far as it's at level 1, level 2. What is level 1, level 2? That means what? A 2-year bowl ban or a 3-year bowl ban, and say I'm going to lose 4 to 5 scholarships a year for maybe the next 3 to 4 years, which we know that can cripple a program. So,
well, these guys all have contacts. Obviously, they've been all over the place at different schools. They've got coaching buddies. They've got contacts all over the place. If I were a serious candidate for the Tennessee coaching job, I would be online and on the phone trying to track down anybody possible that could give me some type of estimation on what this will look like when it's all said and done. To say, hey, do a review of previous NCAA cases against football programs and what's happened, because I would want to know what I would want to have a solid idea of what I'm getting myself into.
Well, would it be safe to say we're not talking about a death penalty? We're not talking about SMU.
No.
I don't think the NCAA want to go down that road again.
That SMU situation went on forever, and it was just so ridiculously blatant for years and years and years and years. Plus, man, for the NCAA, for as much as they would tell you that they don't play favorites, for them to go after an SEC team like that, I just don't see that happening.
That would not happen. That would not happen.
When I arrived in Mississippi in 1994, so this was my second TV job. This was my first one in sports. Ole Miss was right in the middle of a huge scandal that I had to brush up and study on and get up to speed on very quickly. And they were in the middle of some huge violations. This was in 1994-95. And this is before, and they got themselves a strong leader. They picked up Tommy Tuberville, and he brought them through a very difficult bowl ban, scholarship reductions, and there was talk about a death penalty at Ole Miss at that point.
The old thing about degrees of separation, and as far as that transition from the college game to the pro game, and sometimes that transition can be willingly, then sometimes it could be unwillingly. And when I thought about it, it made me just laugh. When it comes to, we go to the Pac-12 for a moment, and that's when you had Harbaugh and Carroll. And I feel that Harbaugh finally caught up with Carroll, and that kind of ushered him as far as the NFL. And then once Carroll got to the NFL, I think Carroll kind of, because he had the upper hand as far as the NFL. I know Harbaugh did his, he did a great job with the 49ers, and he was a lack of a call away from winning a Super Bowl. But I think that finally, the posse caught up with him, and I think that it was a matter of Harbaugh, pushing Carroll to the NFL, and Carroll in turn pushing Harbaugh. And then when I look at the SEC for a moment, I think the same could be said maybe to a lesser degree when it comes to Meyer and Saban, because I believe that Meyer had the upper hand for a moment, and once Saban was able to finally do what he did, I think that was in 2009.
Mm-hmm.
That's when, as the previous caller stated, all these physical ailments came about. Okay, I'm gonna leave, Florida, spend some time with my family. Next thing you know, he's on ESPN, and from ESPN, okay, I'm going to go to one of the only two jobs I would even consider taking, that's either Ohio State or Notre Dame.
You make an interesting point about Carroll and Harbaugh, and I think one of the things that worked for Jim Harbaugh is that, as you well know, if you're in a conference where you don't quite have the talent to compete with the best in the conference, one of the more effective ways to compete is to play a different style of football than everybody else. Just be a different team that's a difficult matchup. And the Pac-12 was playing good football back then. So the Pac-12, for anybody that's been watching football for less than 5 years that's watching right now, the Pac-12 hasn't always been the laughing stock of the Power Five. The Pac-12, from the time I started watching college football up until about 5 or 6 years ago, at any point in time, was relevant. And certainly you're talking about a time in the late 2000, you're talking from about 2008 to about 2010, 11, 12, when Stanford rose to power under Jim Harbaugh. And you're talking about a league that had as good a passers and pass catchers as any league in the country. And so what did Harbaugh do? He loaded up with fullbacks and tight ends and linebackers, and he played in a box. And he had line splits that were basically offensive linemen's shoelaces were rubbing against one another. And he just pounded people and played a completely different style of football. And I think that was part of his success there.